It started quietly, the way small disturbances often do, so ordinary at first that no one thought to connect them. The house on North Mapleton Drive in Holmby Hills had been empty for years, left as a kind of shrine after Farrah Fawcett's death. Then, in early spring, a young couple named the Hardings moved in. They loved its open layout, the sunlight spilling across the Spanish tiles, and the hidden photographs still left behind framed stills from Charlie's Angels. A single Polaroid of Farrah laughing on the patio, her hair caught in the wind. In the first week, they noticed the thermostat. It kept resetting to 68 degrees Fahrenheit every night, no matter what they programmed. Then there was the scent, faint, like gardenia mixed with something powdery and old-fashioned, drifting through the upstairs hallway at exactly 10:30 p.m. each night. It was the same time, they later learned, that Farrah had been known to start her nightly bath routine. Their next-door neighbor, an elderly man named Curtis, was the first to mention it. "She used to come out right around then," he said one afternoon while trimming his hedges. Barefoot, usually with a towel around her hair. Said she liked the night air better than any perfume. He chuckled, but when he noticed the Hardings' nervous smiles, he added softly, "Don't worry if she's still around. She's not the kind to hurt anyone." That night, Claire Harding lay awake, listening to the house creak. The rhythm of it didn't feel random, it pulsed lightly, like footsteps pacing from the master bath to the hall mirror. She told herself it was just the settling of wood, the expansion from the day's heat. But when she finally sat up, she saw that the hallway light, the one they never used, was glowing softly. By the second week, the tension built in subtle ways. The radio in the kitchen began turning itself on to old 1970s stations. The Hardings assumed it was a Bluetooth glitch until one morning they found the dial physically turned to FM 93.1, the same channel that used to play Midnight Special. A friend, visiting for coffee, laughed when Claire mentioned it. "You know Farrah was obsessed with her image, right? If she could see someone new living here, she'd probably make sure you remembered who she was." The joke didn't land. Claire had been hearing whispers in the downstairs corridor, soft, rhythmic, and distinctly feminine, as though someone was rehearsing lines under their breath. Late one night, her husband set up his phone to record. He placed it on the hallway console table, aimed toward the mirror. The next morning, they played the footage back. For 6 minutes, nothing, just the house breathing in darkness. Then, at 10:32 p.m., a flicker of light crossed the glass. Not from outside, not from any bulb or reflection they could find. And then, a voice, fragile, almost brittle, said, "Don't move it." Claire froze. "What?" she whispered. Her husband replayed it. The same words. "Don't move it." They both looked at the vanity in the bathroom later that day, where they had recently relocated an old mirror, the same one that had been in the living room when they moved in. They moved it back, setting it where it had originally hung. That night, the house was silent. No temperature changes. No perfume. No light. For 3 nights. Then, on the 4th, the mirror fogged over completely, even though the air was cool. Across the glass, written with a fingertip, were 2 words. "Still here." The days that followed were strangely quiet, as if the house itself had taken a deep breath and was holding it. Claire began to feel watched, not in a threatening way, but in that subtle, uncanny sense that the air has a presence, a listener. She moved slower through the rooms, her hands brushing along the polished wood banisters and cold marble counters, noticing the smallest details she'd ignored before. The faint smudge of lipstick on a cupboard edge, a tiny chip in the white porcelain sink, a strand of blonde hair caught in the hinge of the old medicine cabinet upstairs. They hadn't told anyone else about the mirror, not even Curtis next door. But Claire couldn't help herself from researching. She spent her evenings scrolling through archived interviews, photos of Farrah in her home, magazine spreads from the late 80s when she'd opened her doors to Architectural Digest. Every image matched their house perfectly: the curved staircase, the wrought iron balcony, the same mirror by the living room window, angled to catch the morning light. One photograph made her pause. Farrah, barefoot, sitting on that same balcony, smiling with her knees drawn close. The caption beneath reading, "My home feels alive when it's filled with warmth," felt almost like a response. One afternoon, Claire visited the local historical society, pretending she was researching vintage architecture. The woman behind the counter, a gray-haired archivist named Evelyn, recognized the address immediately. "Oh, that was the Fawcett residence," she said, lowering her voice slightly, as if out of respect. "She lived there until the very end. People forget how private she became those last few years. She refused to move. Said the house made her feel safe." Evelyn hesitated, then added, "The day after her passing, one of her friends came by to collect a few things. Said he heard the bathroom door close upstairs when he was the only one in the house." Claire thanked her, pretending not to feel her heart sink. That night, she brought up the story to her husband over dinner. He listened but didn't comment, his fork still halfway to his mouth. Finally, he said, "You're letting this get in your head. Old houses creak. Pipes move. It's all in the wiring." His rational tone made sense, yet something about it only deepened her unease. He had never heard the whispers, never smelled the perfume, never seen the faint reflection moving in the mirror. But on Thursday, that changed. He woke up before dawn to get a glass of water and noticed the kitchen lights already on. When he entered, the radio was playing quietly Fleetwood Mac's Landslide. On the counter sat a single teacup filled with water, placed neatly on a small embroidered napkin they didn't own. The cup itself looked antique, patterned with gold trim and delicate roses. He called out for Claire, but she was still upstairs, fast asleep. He unplugged the radio, turned off the lights, and carried the cup to the sink, uneasy at how cold the porcelain felt. In the morning, when Claire came downstairs, she gasped. "Where did that go? Where did what go?" "The napkin," she said. "It was right there, next to the cup." He frowned, opening drawers, checking the counter. "Nothing. Maybe you put it away?" "I didn't touch it," she whispered. The atmosphere of the house began to change after that. It wasn't loud or violent, just off. The mirrors seemed to hold light too long after you moved. The smell of gardenia grew stronger, mixed now with the faint bite of chlorine, like the scent of freshly drawn bathwater. Doors that had stayed open for days began to close halfway on their own, as if nudged by invisible hands. By the weekend, they decided to contact the realtor who had handled the sale, a woman named Dana who'd worked in Beverly Hills real estate since the 1990s. They met her in her small office near Wilshire Boulevard. When Claire gently asked about any odd occurrences in the property's past, Dana hesitated. "Well," she said, "I don't usually talk about this, but you're not the first to ask." She leaned forward. "Before you bought it, another couple moved in. They stayed less than 6 months. Said they'd hear running water at night, always from the same bathroom. Claimed the faucets would turn themselves on. The woman said she once walked in and saw the tub filled, steaming, but empty. They thought it was a plumbing issue. We checked, nothing. Perfectly normal." When Claire asked if they had left anything behind, Dana nodded. "A mirror," she said softly. "I think it was hers originally. Farrah's." The silence between them stretched. Claire's husband reached for her hand under the table. "We still have it," he said. Dana blinked. "Then maybe that's why you're the ones still hearing her." That night, the house seemed almost to breathe with them. The temperature shifted in gentle waves. In the reflection of the bathroom mirror, Claire thought she saw something, a soft shimmer, like heat rising from asphalt. She stepped closer, her own reflection trembling as though underwater. For a moment, she thought she saw the outline of a face, lit by faint gold light, the suggestion of hair cascading in waves. Then, the glass cleared, and it was just her again, pale and staring. She whispered, "What do you want?" And from somewhere deep in the quiet, a reply came, not words, not sound exactly, but the distinct feeling of being answered. Something intimate, almost grateful. She didn't sleep that night. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story. By Sunday evening, the tension in the house had taken on a strange rhythm, quiet during the day, watchful at night. It wasn't just about sounds anymore, or scents, or the flickering of lights. It was the feeling of presence, as if someone else lived there too. Someone who moved through the rooms just after they left, who occupied the air with a patience that didn't belong to the living. Claire began leaving small offerings without meaning to, folding towels neatly on the edge of the bathtub, placing flowers on the vanity table where she swore she saw the faint outline of lipstick once. She didn't think of it as worship or fear or even curiosity. It was closer to respect, the kind one gives to a photograph you can't throw away. Her husband, Matt, had grown quieter too. He still didn't admit to believing, but something about his voice had changed. He kept his sentences short, glancing often at the staircase as if expecting to see someone standing there. One night, he admitted he'd started waking up at 3:15 every morning, always the same time, hearing what he described as a soft humming, like someone practicing scales. Claire wanted to tell him she heard it too, but she didn't. That evening, they invited Curtis over for dinner, hoping to talk about anything but the house. The old man brought wine, laughed at their new paint color in the dining room, and talked about the neighborhood when Farrah still lived there. "You'd see her jogging down Mapleton in those tight red sweats," he said with a grin. "Didn't matter if it was dawn or dusk. She'd stop and talk to anyone. Sweet woman, really. You know, she used to say the house gave her energy. Said it kept her centered." Then his tone shifted. "Of course, after Ryan stopped visiting, she got quieter. Spent most evenings upstairs, near the balcony. Used to light candles by that big mirror. Said it helped her remember what light felt like." He paused, swirling the wine in his glass. "Maybe that's what she's still doing." After Curtis left, the silence returned heavier than before. Matt went upstairs first, leaving the hallway light on. Claire lingered in the kitchen, washing dishes, staring out at the garden through the dark glass of the window. That's when she saw it, the faint shimmer of movement, as though someone had just passed between the hedges. Not a shape exactly, more like the air itself had shifted, bending light around something unseen. She turned off the faucet and stood still, listening. Then came the smell. Gardenia, unmistakable and stronger than ever, filling the kitchen until she could almost taste it. Her hands trembled, but she didn't move. From upstairs came Matt's voice, sharp and startled. "Claire!" She ran up the steps, nearly tripping on the last one. He was standing in the bedroom doorway, pale, eyes fixed on the mirror across the room. The fog on its surface had returned, glistening faintly under the lamp. There, written once again, were two words but not the same as before. "Don't forget." Matt's voice cracked. "Forget what?" There was no answer, only the faint click of the bathroom door slowly closing by itself. They stood frozen until the air cleared, until the word faded into streaks of moisture. The next morning, Matt took the mirror down, carried it into the garage, and covered it with an old sheet. He didn't want to throw it away, said it felt wrong, but he couldn't leave it where it had been. Claire didn't argue. She slept fitfully that night, her dreams filled with fragmented flashes. Farrah's laugh, a white towel on marble, the shimmer of water under candlelight. A few days later, she drove to Santa Monica to meet Evelyn, the archivist, again. Evelyn had dug up an old article from 2006, a small interview Farrah had given near the end of her career. The piece mentioned her fascination with reflections, her belief that mirrors hold memories like skin holds warmth. She had even collected antique ones. She said each mirror in her home had a story, Evelyn told her. Her favorite was the large one in the bedroom. She called it the witness. Said it was the only thing that had seen her exactly as she was. Claire returned home at dusk, the streets damp from a passing drizzle. She parked in the driveway, noticing how the front windows glowed faintly from the inside, though she was certain she had turned all the lights off before leaving. She walked in slowly, the air thick, the smell of gardenia faint but present. "Matt?" she called. No answer. The sound came, then soft footsteps overhead, deliberate, unhurried. She followed them up the stairs, her pulse rising. The hallway was dim, the door to the garage slightly ajar. She pushed it open, expecting to see Matt working. The mirror was uncovered. The sheet lay crumpled on the floor, and across the surface of the glass was a soft, wavering glow, like candlelight reflected from somewhere unseen. The garage was cold, but inside that reflection, The air seemed warm. She stepped closer, and in that moment, she saw her own face, but behind it, faint and overlapping, another woman's features. Soft curls of blonde hair, eyes filled with quiet recognition, a half-smile that didn't quite belong to this world. Claire whispered, "I didn't forget." And for the first time, she thought she saw the other woman's smile, grateful, almost relieved, before the light faded and the mirror turned dark once more. From that night on, the smell never came back. But sometimes, in the stillness of early morning, Claire would walk through the house and feel that warmth again, the invisible presence of someone who had loved the light too much to ever truly leave it. Weeks passed, and the quiet settled back into the house like a slow exhale. The Hardings tried to convince themselves that what they had witnessed, the mirror, the messages, the scents, were the products of stress, coincidence, and suggestion. But the truth was never that simple. There was something about the house, something that remembered. The mornings grew easier. Claire opened the curtains each day to sunlight spilling across the terracotta floors, the scent of citrus trees drifting from the garden. She tried to reclaim the spaces, playing soft music while she cooked, leaving the doors open, making the home feel lived in. Yet even in the daylight, she could sense it. The faint warmth in the air, the feeling of being gently accompanied rather than alone. Matt returned to work, throwing himself into late nights at the office. He didn't talk about the mirror anymore, but he hadn't dared to move it again. It stayed in the garage, uncovered, leaning against the wall where the afternoon light hit it just right. Occasionally, Claire would find him there after dinner, staring into the glass. When she asked what he was doing, he always said the same thing: nothing, just thinking. But she could see something in his eyes, a quiet reverence, maybe even guilt. One Saturday, Claire decided to clear the air once and for all. She invited a housekeeper named Elena, a woman who had worked for Farrah briefly during her final years. Elena arrived in a soft pink cardigan, clutching a rosary, her eyes sharp despite her age. "I never thought I'd see this place again," she said as she stepped inside, looking around with a tender smile. Miss Fawcett loved this house more than anything. She said it kept her spirit strong. Claire led her through each room. When they reached the bedroom, Elena paused, her hand brushing against the frame of the window. "She used to stand here every morning," she murmured. "Wouldn't let me close the curtains. Said she needed to see the sun before anything else." Claire hesitated, then asked carefully, "Did she ever mention anything strange after she got sick?" Elena's smile faltered. "She spoke to the mirror sometimes, quietly. I thought she was praying, but once I heard her say, 'If I don't come back, remember me here.' I told her not to talk like that, but she only smiled and said, 'You'll understand one day.'" A chill moved through the room, subtle but undeniable. They went to the garage next. When Elena saw the mirror, she froze. "That's it," she whispered. "Her favorite." She stepped closer, touching the edge of the glass gently. She said this one never lied. I didn't know what she meant. Before Claire could reply, a flicker of movement shimmered across the mirror's surface, brief, almost imperceptible, like sunlight catching water. Elena crossed herself. "She's not angry," she said softly. "She's watching." That night, after Elena left, the house was silent again. Matt fell asleep early. Claire stayed downstairs, a mug of tea cooling beside her, the hum of the refrigerator her only companion. The clock ticked past 10, then 10:30. That familiar scent, gardenia, drifted faintly through the air. Claire stood, moving toward the hallway. The house felt alive in a way she couldn't describe, its silence layered with meaning. She followed the smell to the staircase, then up to the landing where moonlight spilled across the floorboards. The door to the balcony stood open, swaying slightly in the wind. Stepping outside, she felt the warmth of Los Angeles night against her skin. The city stretched below, distant and soft, like a sea of amber light. She thought of Farrah sitting there once, laughing with friends, her hair glowing in the same moonlight. Claire whispered into the air, "You can rest now. It's okay." Something moved behind her, a shift of air, almost a sigh. When she turned, The reflection in the glass door showed two figures. Her own, and behind her, faint but radiant, the outline of a woman in white, her hair luminous, her eyes gentle. The reflection didn't frighten her. It felt peaceful, almost protective. Then, slowly, it faded until there was only her reflection again. Her eyes wet, her breath trembling. In the following days, the changes were subtle but real. The air felt lighter, the nights calm. The thermostat stopped resetting. The smell of gardenia never returned. The radio stayed silent unless they turned it on themselves. But the mirror remained. Claire couldn't bring herself to sell it, or move it, or even cover it again. It stayed in the corner of the garage, reflecting only what stood before it. And yet, sometimes, when the afternoon sun hit just right, she could swear she saw something shimmer faintly inside a brief echo of a smile. A lock of golden hair, a trace of warmth that didn't belong to this world. Years later, when the Hardings eventually sold the house, Claire left a small note in a drawer for whoever came next. It said, "If the lights flicker or the air smells sweet, don't be afraid. She's still here, but only in the good ways." And though she never said it aloud, Claire knew that somewhere beyond reflection, beyond memory, Farrah's spirit had found her quiet place again among sunlight, gardenias, and mirrors that still remembered her smile. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story.